Hello and welcome to the Finally Quit Porn podcast. Today I'm joined by Mary Paulus again, my guest, mentor, coach, and business partner now on this Beyond Compulsion method. So really excited to have you here again, Mary. Welcome on the show. How you doing?
I'm doing good today. How are
Yeah,
you?
good to have you. Yeah, I'm doing good as well. Thank you.
Good
And
to be back on the podcast. It's
I
been a
know
while.
it's been a while. We've got a lot to talk about. I feel like the
Yeah.
last 3 months have been crazy in terms of the work we've been doing together, the amount of people we've
Yes.
been helping with this new method,
Yeah.
and it's been really good. And we're talking pretty much every day. So I'm looking forward to doing these podcasts with you. Should be
Yes.
fun. So yeah.
Yes.
So what we're going to do on this podcast is we're going to start off with what we call the remember letter. And this is a really critical part of our program, one of many parts. And essentially, it's a letter that our clients write to themselves to help them remember how terrible they feel with their porn addiction. So we're just gonna read out one of the remember letters because hopefully this can kind of help people realize that they're not alone and also to take this quite seriously because it really does impact our clients' lives massively. And I wouldn't be here talking now if it hadn't have impacted my life a huge amount as well. So here it is. What it's really like to engage in compulsive behavior, being out of control and being unable to stop. I've been engaging in compulsive behavior for as long as I can remember. I'm 31 years old today, and I cannot remember a time in my adult life, my young adult life, and even parts of my childhood where I have not been compelled and affected by my addiction to pornography, masturbation, and in the last decade, sex. It has been a confusing and all-consuming battle of the mind and spirit. It has undoubtedly stunted my growth as a man and hindered my ability to relate to myself, my friends, family, and the world healthfully. When I think about porn and sex, I think it brings me comfort. I feel less alone when I watch it, and I think I feel more connected to myself and the world somehow. Growing up gay in a conservative Christian household, I often felt I could not be myself and that I was wrong. I believed it too. But when I look at porn and when I have sexual encounters, it's, I'm not wrong. I'm not alone. This is okay. And it feels so good. I want to do it again and again. I understand this is all mind trick and perversion of the truth. I'm not wrong, but my addiction and compulsive behavior is. It's costing me everything I want out of life and the values I hold dear. When I engage in pornography, I shut out the outside world and can't think of anything else. My fix comes first. I often think I can just watch a quick video and be done with it, but 1 or 2 hours later, I exit out of its mind-numbing state. Yeah, I got my fix, but I am also depleted. I probably ignored some of my responsibilities and lied to my loved ones. Sometimes just porn doesn't do the trick, and I take poppers. I think that sniffing unregulated chemicals will make me feel good, but after the first hit, it's a never-ending hunger to chase that feeling. That mind-numbing feeling when nothing else matters but the fix of getting off, feeling good, and potentially meeting up with someone to fix what porn can't. Porn always begets sex, and the cycle continues. At work, I can be distracted. After work, instead of meeting friends, working out, or doing something productive, I could spend hours engaging in compulsive behavior. I know it's bad for me, and I know I'm putting myself at risk, but I'm addicted and I crave more. I feel guilty, hopeless, angered at myself, and yet I continue on the same path. I could go on, but I'm no longer willing to put up with this cycle. When I type that, it doesn't yet feel honest. I don't trust myself, but I know deep down I no longer want to put up with this. I want my life back. I know I can feel better and be better than ever before. My compulsive behavior is not serving me what it promises. Wow, it's heavy.
Yeah. And all the letters are as intense as that, you know? It's quite the contradiction when you think about how much addiction is like trivialized and even joked about. Like it's like you said you were at your party, work party, and hearing people just like joking about excessive alcohol use, it's and we read these letters and hear, these heartfelt documentation from these men, and it's hard to stomach people joking about addiction, you know?
Mm,
It's happening all the time. It's literally everywhere. Food addiction, food compulsion is joked about literally constantly. You can't, nobody can make a comment about food without somebody, adding a joke to it. It's it's just not funny. And I think we talked about they were making jokes. The first I'd heard making jokes about pornography on the Oscars, I think it was, or whatever, the Grant, or what, I think it was the Oscars. Yeah. It's not funny. It's needs to be taken seriously because people are really suffering. And I think with all the joking, they're afraid to really be honest, with how they feel. And we definitely have some honest documentation right there.
mm,
And all of the remember letters that we've heard from people, there's nobody making jokes talking about, oh, this is really a good time. It's like,
yeah.
it's really destroying lives.
Yeah, I
And
think
then,
for
yeah,
me,
go ahead.
for me, I
Mhm.
think it's less about the joking because I know I've like jokes in the past, to be honest with you, about porn addiction and had a bit of a laugh about it with my friends. Probably not addiction as such, but more just like looking at porn and like joking around that. And there is a culture around that, especially growing up in certain TV programs like The In-Betweeners. And I did find some of the stuff funny, but I think when you're actually really in addiction, it is brutal. And I don't think I've experienced anything as painful as going through a pornography addiction in my life. And I don't think I ever will experience anything as painful as that. And it is dark. And I think the main thing is less about not joking, but more about taking this serious and really taking this seriously and not keeping no fap streaks or watching funny videos on YouTube about quitting porn and actually acknowledging like, no, this is really impacting my life. And I really do need to make a change here because if I don't, I'm going to be stuck in this cycle indefinitely. That is what's going to happen. And that's what we're starting to understand from speaking to clients and what they've tried in the past is a lot of them have tried so many things, but the cycle has just continued spinning, going round and round and round. And a lot of them are just fed up now and just frustrated.
Yeah.
And they just want it to be over. And we really want to help people get there. So I want to ask you, Mary, over the last 3 months, has there been anything that you've maybe noticed around working with people with porn addiction in particular that stood out to you? Like, how's the experience been? Because I guess you're relatively new to the world of porn addiction, and I know you have been working in addiction for like 34 years or something, but how's it been working with porn and sex addiction specifically?
Well, I have to say the parallels between food compulsion, which I've worked in for years and years and years, literally wrote the book Beyond Food Compulsion. The parallels are I mean, there's so many similarities. And what I'm learning, is like this no fap streaks, with so much talk of all the guys talk about the streaks, right? And how that intermittently reinforcing, was like they go on a streak and then they engage, right? Then they go on a streak, then they engage. It's just like food compulsion. People go on a diet, which is usually pretty extreme, trying not to think about their food compulsion, and then they cheat or whatever they want to call it, reward themselves or go off the diet, and they intermittently reinforce. And so now we're looking at an obesity epidemic, which is, you can see it now. All you have to do is open your eyes. We're going for 51% obesity in America by 2030. I don't know what you got going on over there, but thing is with the porn addiction, it's got the same intermittent reinforcement going on because of all the like the streaks are like diets, it's kind of like the same thing. But the porn addiction, you can't see it, you can't see it. I mean, of course, people say that obesity is just a body type, but it's like I look at it and I see, oh, there's a food compulsive right there, right? But porn addiction, you can't see it. And I tell you, I've been looking around, looking differently at different men and now and going, oh, they probably got it going on. They probably got it going on. You can't see it when you just glance and go, oh, there's a someone who's got a porn addiction.
Yeah.
I think it's probably going to be on the same trajectory as food compulsion, as obesity, because of that intermittent reinforcement, and that somehow it's taught, you know, like, oh, and we've talked about it before, it's just you're slipping, you know, it's part of your recovery. And I don't know, working with the guys, there's not one of them that's not kind of got this streak thing ingrained, you know, like
Mm.
somehow it's no big deal to like go off your streak because you're just going to get on another one, when they don't realize this. If you want to permanently quit this, this is not serving you. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Yeah.
So if they want to, you got to treat it like any addiction where you engage in it, you're going to relapse. You know, it's just, it's not, it's just trivialized, and it's really frustrating to me because I see so many young men out there that are, I mean, and the guys we're working with, you know, it's like they're suffering. Listen to
Mm.
that letter we just read, you know, and I mean, many more like it. They're really suffering, but we got to, you know, like with food compulsion, that entire diet industry working against people that are trying, that the few that are acknowledging their food compulsion and trying to get free of it and treat it as an addiction, you know, it's like that with the guys, you know, it's
Yeah.
there.
Well, I'll
Now
tell you
we've got a
why.
whole all these different apps and all these
Yeah.
different sites working against the work that we're doing, trying to teach them the reality of addiction. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like that's the problem that we kind of have, is like we're not just teaching people a method and then they go and use that method. We're teaching them a method, but also teaching them a ton of unlearning. And actually, the guy who's probably contacted us the least in terms of like going back and forth and needing clarification on the program and stuff is the guy who has been least involved in NoFap. So I won't say his name or anything, but we know who he is. Like he's gone 3 months now, quitting porn completely, and he's doing really, really well. And he wasn't into no fap. He wasn't doing no, he was doing the
No.
streaks. He was doing the streaks, but he wasn't into like the no fap communities. He hadn't gone on YouTube too much. He's the youngest one in the program as well. And he's basically just cracked on and made it really, really simple. Like just learned his script, option A, option B, junkie thinking, sort of
Yes.
job done really. Whereas the other guys who have learned all of this stuff about removing triggers and sort of setting up certain conditions in their life to try and avoid porn in one way or another, they're the guys who so far have needed more and more sort of one-on-one sort of WhatsApp support. So like just kind of going back and forth with me and Mary trying to understand things. So I had a really good example of that this morning actually. So I may as well bring that up. We were
Sure,
talking
yeah.
to a guy and he asked a really good question, to be fair. And basically, what I was replying about was I was saying, okay, so it's really important to understand this from the perspective of gaining permanent freedom from this addiction, because where
Yeah.
most people go wrong is they focus on streaks and whether they are engaging in this behavior or not. So some people have numbers in their head for what a good streak is, etc. You know, I did this for 10 years, but when you get out of deprivation thinking, you realize that even being on a long streak isn't freedom. So this is a really, really powerful point. Being on a long streak is not freedom. And this is because most people on a streak are doing the following: resisting urges, distracting themselves, reducing triggers, avoiding certain situations, avoiding feelings, using substitutes. And that list just goes on and on and on. You know, that's what I did for 10 years. And none of that is freedom because it denies the reality of the choice that you have to look at porn. It denies the reality that you do want porn and you also don't want to look at porn. This is the basic dilemma. So a quick example is in the past, I tried to keep a very regimented routine and schedule because I was essentially fearful of feeling the desire. And that led to streaks, but that was unsustainable because when the desire hit, I felt deprived. And eventually the resistance and intense urges led to me engaging in porn and feeling absolutely terrible again. And then I wrote, whereas now I'm free, I no longer need to have any conditions in my life to ensure I can't look at porn or to ensure I don't look at porn. And this is because I can look at porn if I want to. I can look at porn. This is sort of deprivation thinking, which we get into more detail throughout the
Yeah.
program and a lot of our work. But hopefully, we'll talk about it on here a lot as well. So, what I wrote is, of course, I can look at porn and I can, you know, choose that path if I want to, but I don't because I've got a full script. And then I just wrote a bit about how I still live like a disciplined life and have a good routine and structure and stuff, but I'm no longer doing it from a place of like fear, because in the past it was like,
Right.
right, I'm gonna have to meditate for an hour. I need to have a cold shower. I need to write my goals for the day. I need to put my phone away. I need to make sure I eat
Yeah.
healthily. I need to make sure I get my socialization in. Like, that sounds so weird. I need to get my
Constant
socialization in.
constant maintenance to
Yeah,
try not to think about it.
yeah,
It's compulsive desire, people. It refuses to be ignored. You can't, that's a full-time job, Tom.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the thing is too, is like a lot of the guys, they're controlling it, right? Or whatever. But when you get right down to it, it comes out in their remember letters. It comes out in our calls that controlling it is hell. Trying to control it is hell. It's like I've said it before. I've had compulsive eaters say they always keep their fat suit in the closet because they know it's coming back, right? So same thing with the pornography, it's
Mm,
you can just keep distracting, but it's going to come back. So why not just learn the tool to deal with the desire so you don't have to be afraid of them anymore? It's
mm,
like you can show that addictive part of the mind that you're willing to face those desires, and of course, reiterate that you have a choice about it, because feelings of deprivation are real, and there seems to be some confusion, like, around this topic of the feelings of deprivation, but you might not be consciously thinking, oh my God, I can't do this, I can't do this, oh, I don't have a choice, oh my God, I have to stop doing this. But on some level, you're feeling that way. And when you can correct that thinking, you can avoid all those feelings of deprivation, which is critical because they're intense, and then you just want to break out of those feelings rather than get through the process, face the desire, get through the process and be able to make a choice in the moment. And, withdrawal is uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to be like all these crazy feelings of deprivation on top of it. It's just a simple process of withdrawal. You know exactly what to expect. But it's really critical that frame of mind of that you do have a choice about it. Of course, you won't have to act on it once you are able to actually apply the techniques and get free. You don't have to act on it. But knowing, reiterating through repetition that you do have a choice dramatically changes the way that you feel about the process.
mm, mm.
You're
Yeah,
not doing it to prove you can, to
yeah.
get all
Well,
the feelings.
as we
Yeah.
always say, learn by thinking, not doing. And that same guy who I messaged this morning with that long message I just wrote out
Yeah.
then, I just read
Yeah.
out, he actually ended up having a bit of a light bulb moment. So he like posted in the school community
Yes.
how he finally understood, like, oh, okay, I'm starting to realize now, like, I can look at porn if I want, but
Yes.
that doesn't mean that's okay. Because that's a big distinction. Just because
Yes.
you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. It's like
Or that
right
it's okay with
now,
you. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It doesn't mean it's okay with you. Like right now, I could literally punch myself in the face. Like that
Yeah.
is an option. Like, but I'm not gonna go do that. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't make any sense, because rationally, when I look at A and B of the consequences, it's
Yeah.
like that's not gonna be worth it. And if you look at the A and B of looking at porn, it's like, okay, well, yeah, you're gonna gain temporary escape from the withdrawal. You're gonna gain temporary escape from the discomfort of withdrawal, but what's like your option A? Like, what's the other option?
At a very high cost. The letter you just read.
Yeah.
You have a choice, but this is, don't kid yourself about the choice you're making. But then when addiction comes into the play, I mean, it's people kid themselves, and it's these streaks and stuff, and what's kind of promoted out there, this slipping crap or whatever, is like you can have this documentation, but then the addictive part of the mind tries to convince you, oh well, I'm just going to do it once, I'm going to get away with it, it's not going to be a problem.
Mm,
No, bullshit. You deny the reality of addiction, you're not going to get free. It's really important to take this very seriously.
mm,
And again, it's not a life sentence. When you really go after it, you stop denying the reality of addiction, you stop trying to distract yourself from it, then you can get permanently free of it. It's not this thing that you're going to be trying to control for the rest of your life. I think the same person that you were communicating with was thinking into the future of some of the other stuff I read, thinking into the future of like, oh my God, I just feel like I'm gonna have this desire forever, right? It was in there
Yeah.
like a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Feel like I'm going to have this desire forever, and how am I going to ever get free of that? Because I think that people really believe through societal messages that addiction literally is a life sentence. And like when you're hearing about addiction, when you're reading about people in recovery or whatever, I don't know about you or the listeners, but I never hear people talking about joy and happiness and freedom. They're just like usually just hanging on, got to go to a meeting. Oh my God, suffering still. They may not be using whatever their compulsive or addictive behaviors, they may not be using, but they're suffering. And I really started thinking about that the other day when you were describing that day you had, when you were just like feeling just joyous.
Yeah.
It's like it's that really happens with true freedom from addiction, when you're not just always stuck in it, always running, always going from one behavior to another because someone's telling you you're helpless and you need something. You need to
Yeah.
substitute something, whether it's an addictive drug or, because you need to be medicated because, once you realize you can just feel your feelings and feel the way you feel, and that's normal, right? Emotions are normal. People have stress, people have stuff in their lives. It's all
Mm.
normal. And feelings are temporary, they change,
Yeah.
but what's not temporary is addiction, and when you start just like using addictive behaviors to change the way you feel, guess what? Now you're stuck in addiction, and that is not temporary.
Yeah.
So,
So yesterday there were like 3 or 4 guys who were all messaging saying, okay, like they were basically saying, right, using our script now and it's going well. So I'm managing to deal with my urges to look at porn. However, I've started to notice that I'm seeing people like out and about more, women and men. I'm getting attracted to them out on the street more and more. And they were asking, like, what do we do with this? And it was like
yeah,
quite a few of these guys all kind of, saying the same sort of thing, really.
yeah,
And it was interesting to me because I've done a lot of like research into the neuroscience behind quitting pornography. And essentially what's going on is that the brain gets wired in a certain way to create a load of triggers and a load of craving when you're going through withdrawal. And so it's very, very natural for the brain to start to like seek out everything sexual
yeah,
possible because it's the addictive part of the mind just trying to get you
yeah,
into a state of helplessness. It's trying to get you back to this like massive mind altering experience of going and like masturbating and having an orgasm. So
yeah,
essentially, the mind for a period of time is going to have a lot more craving and it is going to be challenging at times, maybe to feel some discomfort. But overall, once you know how to deal with that discomfort, you're empowered. Like you can just make that choice and it doesn't last forever. Like the
yeah,
brain literally changes. There's something called delta phos B. It's a transcription factor, and we don't need to go into it in too much detail, but essentially it changes the genes. It literally changes your genes. And I think people say it kind of lasts. I mean, it does vary, but like what I've read anyway, it seems to be sort of between maybe 30 and 90 days. But I'm not saying that's like the absolute answer, but there is quite a lot of research into delta phos B and how long it stays in the brain. It depends on previous use. But what I just want to get across is that once the brain changes, it's changed. Like if you actually
yeah,
really deal with the urges properly, then the
yeah,
brain changes. But where I went wrong in the past is I wasn't actually dealing with the urges properly. I was just going on these streaks by reducing the triggers, getting really good at dealing with my emotions, getting really good at staying busy and being distracted. So I didn't actually let my brain rewire. I was just escaping the potential of the desire. So I didn't basically go and engage because back then I didn't know how to deal with the desire, and the desire is
yeah,
inevitable. Like the desire is not going to go away. People think it's going to go away someday. The desire is
yeah,
not going to go away until you actually feel the desire, accept it, realize
yeah,
that yeah, I'm wanting to engage my compulsive behavior right now, and make your choice. That's how you get rid of the
yeah.
desire in the long term, is by feeling the desire in the short term.
And like I told you too, now that you've done this work and you're not driven by this addiction, enjoy looking at the pretty girls. right?
Yeah.
It's like you can go, oh, I mean, I like looking at pretty girls and I'm straight, you know, but it's like, well, they're fashion and they just look so good and whatever. It's like you can do that, and you can do that in a reasonable way and not have to go into this place in your head. Oh my God, it's making me want to go look at porn. And now what am I going to do with this desire? Now I got to go work out and go meditate and go whatever. You can just go, oh, that's nice. That's nice to look at. That's pleasant. That's enjoyable. And not be afraid of this desire, that you have, because you have a way to deal with that. If it did take you to that place, which once you do the permanent work, it doesn't really take you to that place. You can just enjoy that. It's like with
Mm.
the food compulsives, you can just enjoy some dessert, enjoy some ice cream or whatever they're so afraid of, because oh my God, if I eat that and then I'm going to binge everything in sight. And the other thing, I saw something online literally yesterday, um, where they were showing the neural pathways disconnecting and reconnecting. So, like you're saying, it literally is physical change. And, people want, oh, is this really going to work? Well, yeah, if you use the script repetitively, it can't not work. It's going to change your brain. And it's designed to have not any loopholes for the addictive part of the mind to get in there and mess with you. So if you commit to that script and think it through and make the choice, there's physical changes in the brain. So you don't have to be this ball and chain for the rest of your life where you're constantly afraid of the next crisis that's going to make you want to engage in your addictive behavior. It'll be like, probably won't even come up. And if it does, your brain at that point will go on autopilot to go, oh, option A, no, fuck that. I'll
Mm.
take option B, thanks.
Yeah.
So yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And that option B is so good. I mean, some of my things is like I've really, really experienced over the last few months have been more confidence, more energy, more clarity, no longer thinking about this problem. And it's just the simplicity, like the
Yeah.
ease at
Yeah.
which I can understand the minds. But I think a lot of that does come from learning about the addicted part of the mind and the rational mind and how this all works because I remember there's been a few people who have been like, oh, can you just like basically give us the script? But the script is essentially useless without understanding the addicted mind because you have to understand junkie thinking and how the addicted part of the mind will get you into the spin. You have to understand how the addicted part of the mind will create these junkie thoughts, which are sort of any excuse, rationalization that will come
Yeah.
up to try and get you to engage. And I'd really recommend writing those down for anyone listening to this. Just start writing down any junkie thoughts
Yeah.
and rationalizations because it's just the addicted part of the mind, but you got to see that for what it is. Because when
Yeah.
you have a remember letter and you realize how dark that actually is and the problem you're experiencing, you can see that any of this justification, excuse, rationalization, it's just the addicted part of the mind. Because why would you rationally choose something that's causing you that much suffering? It makes absolutely no sense. So you have to really get clear with this stuff and be
Yeah.
committed. So, yeah.
Yeah. And the addicted, it's like when you don't understand addictive thinking and the patterns that there are and what it's trying to get you to do, it's just kind of all this stuff, especially the spin, all this stuff, floating around in your head and you don't know what to do with it. Well, the script will handle that, but it's such great insurance on another level to be able to talk back very specifically to any addictive thinking that comes up, to change those up little pathways, the little tributaries, change those. And also just, I mean, it's it's very much added insurance to be able to understand what it's trying to do, because then it's really much easier to identify. I mean, you can identify it because if you're trying to convince yourself to choose option A, there's bullshit in there somewhere, right? So, but when you really understand how the addictive part of the mind works, you're way less likely to be fooled by it because you go, oh, I get that. That's future thinking. Oh, I get that. That's self-deprecation. Oh, I get that. That's denying the reality of addiction. I get, you really start to understand the patterns. That's deprivation thinking, it. And then, I mean, knowledge is powerful, and I feel like as far as addiction work out there, treatment, I mean, I don't know what they're teaching, but I know what I do see is a giant addiction epidemic. which is now bleeding into mental illness too, because people that have untreated addictions are not going to be mentally well, you know?
Yeah.
It's just what a horrible place to be, living in that constant conflict, you know, of having this addiction, doing this thing to yourself that you know is very harmful and not being able to stop. That's going to make anybody mentally unwell. Okay, so now let's just give them some more medications and try to numb that out or whatever, you know. As far as I can tell, most of these meds are pretty powerful, you know, as
Yeah, I
far as
think
like, yeah,
I think what you want if you're listening to this, like the goal for you, in my opinion, should be to get to a place where you know with absolute certainty how to deal with porn addiction. And you have to have that set way of dealing with it without like loads of different conditions that negatively impact your life. You know, we don't want to be like relying on doing certain things that are unsustainable. You want to get to a position where you have mental freedom because you know through the way you've changed your thoughts how the addicted mind works. And that's what I feel like I'm now experiencing, which I'm really, really grateful for. And the lucky thing for me, I am really lucky in this regard, but by working with Mary and working with all these clients now, what I get to do is also help other people figure out like, oh, that's junky thinking. But also for me, it's been quite interesting because I resonate so much with all the clients' junky thinking. It's just I feel like I'm now having worked with Mary for longer. I'm just like one step ahead of where they'll be in a few months because I can go, oh yeah, so you're minimizing now because of X, Y, Z, or oh,
yes,
you're emotionally obfuscating, or you're
right,
doing
yeah,
this or you're doing that. And we want to get people through the program and through this podcast as well to a position where they can actually spot like their own junky thinking and actually go, oh yeah, that is the addicted part of the mind because, well, the remember letter, you know, like my option A is so, so bad. I don't want to ever go back to that again.
yeah.
And I can go back to that if I deny the reality of addiction.
Yeah. And I like too that we're going to be cataloging junky thoughts, you know, on the program on our school.com, you know, just putting it all in there so people can go and like hear junky thoughts, like share, like, oh, I thought that. Well, here's the response, you know, and anytime someone has a junky thought, we're going to be putting it into school. So it's in the staying stopped phase for people so that if they have thoughts down the road, they can treat them as well, you know?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
problem with like most sort of communities, in my opinion, on like porn addiction recovery, is they're just full of junky thoughts and like
Yeah.
everyone's just rationalizing and making an excuse for each other. So I was literally in them for 8 years, like on Brain Buddy, and it's like every time I relapse, it's like, guys, I've relapsed, and then everyone's like, oh, how you feeling? What happened? What was the trigger? And everyone's like, okay, come on, soldier, like we're back to it tomorrow. Like you get all that
Yep.
massive motivation,
Avoid
like
that trigger.
yeah, yeah. What's the
Yeah.
trigger? Let's sort that out. And like just literally going around in circles,
Yeah.
finding so many triggers, which was
Yeah.
great for my self-development as a human being. So it got me into so many great books and got
Yeah.
me into the gym and meditation. But when it comes to porn addiction recovery, it's just totally irrelevant. Like
Yeah.
all there is
Yeah.
this inevitable moment of desire. And
Yeah.
the funny thing is, I ended up living
Yeah.
this like, super, super busy life. And it's like
Yeah.
last week I'm like stressing out. I've got to finish this book for book club because now I run a book club. Like, why do I run a book club?
Yeah.
I don't want to run a book club anymore. But
You gotta finish the book when you run the book club. Or are you gonna
I
pretend?
literally, so I had to finish this book. It was set in like 1970s Ghana, and
Yeah.
I'm just stressing out, like trying to finish this book. And it's like when I look back, it's like I started this book club about 6 or 7 months ago before I met Mary. When I was
Yeah.
just trying to live this like super busy, active
Yeah.
life, and it's just like I want to like just chill out now. You know, I don't want this busy life
Yeah.
anymore. I know how to deal with porn, so I'm fine.
Yeah.
But anyway, gone down to 3 days at work, so I can do 2 days on this work, which is super fun. So yeah, it's all good.
Like downtime can actually be like peaceful and nice, right? You don't have to
Yeah,
keep trying to find another way to run from your desires for pornography, you know?
yeah,
Oh
literally.
yeah.
Can just
The beauty
yeah.
of it, you know?
It
Yes.
is, yeah, it's
Um,
interesting. I think that's the thing though, is like people aim for the wrong thing. People aim for like the amount of days they've gone without porn.
yeah.
But if you're just distracting and substituting, it's irrelevant. Like we've had guys before like that I've spoken to. Well, we had a guy. who came on the podcast. Great guy, but yeah, he came on the podcast and he was doing one of these streaks, and then he mentioned like his methods, and there's just like a lot of substitution. And to be honest with you, I kind of knew there and then, right, this ain't gonna last too long, to be honest with you. And I said to him, like, do you want some coaching? Because we have this method now, and he just wasn't interested because he was on a streak. And now he's in a
Yeah.
really bad place. And I've gone to him again, like, look, I'm here. Like, I actually really feel for you. Like, here's a video. Like, watch this. Like, this will help you. Like, I've been trying to message him and help him. And hopefully that will help him a lot, to be honest with you, because he's in a dark place right now. But that's
Yeah.
the thing, is that substitution, it doesn't work. It's not sustainable. You can't remove your triggers and think that that's going to lead to permanent mental freedom, because you have to feel the desire to change the brain. You have to feel that desire and not act
Yeah.
on it to change the brain. That's how you actually recover from this problem.
Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah. I can relate to this. It's I just feel like the guys are they hang on to these streaks because they feel like it's something, because maybe that's all they could attain before, it was just like, if I get this much, it's like, but it's just not, it's not permanent. And I don't know, I just, being controlled by an addiction, or trying to control an addiction, there's just no peace in that. It's not a way to live, and it doesn't have to be that way. And I feel like the goal, I mean, these goals of like these streaks or whatever, the goal should be how many times you can use your script on a desire, right, and not have to act on it. Now that would be permanent change, right? Not just hanging on. Okay, I'm just not going to do it. Let me find another way to distract myself or whatever, to not think about it, rather than have this goal. Okay, here's another opportunity. Here's a desire, because they're going to come up. You can't avoid triggers. We've said that time and time again. You can't avoid triggers. You don't know what's going to trigger you until you change the brain. Then you don't have the triggers, so make
Yeah.
that the goal, thinking it through rationally, making your choice every time it comes up, and looking, I mean, you're not going to trigger yourself on purpose, but not being afraid of triggers and knowing every trigger you have, that's another opportunity to have that permanent change in the brain. So,
Yeah. To be fair, I did actually learn some of that stuff about a year or two ago from this woman called Sarah Brewer. She has a pretty good podcast. I told you about it before, actually. But yeah, Sarah
yep.
Brewer, she did talk quite a lot about how to change the brain, you need to experience the desire and experience the urges. But from what I now know, in my opinion, the reason her method doesn't work for a lot of people, including guys who have now come to us, is that essentially it doesn't tap into the thoughts as much as I think it should, because thoughts create feelings and feelings create actions, and you need to change the way that you think to change the way that you act. And if you're just
Yeah.
there sitting, sort of feeling some sensations in your body, or doing some deep breathing, or doing this or doing that, or having all these different options for how do you deal with an urge, eventually the addictive part of the mind just takes over, because that's
Yeah.
inevitable. The addictive part of the mind is going to do everything it can to get what it wants. It wants its massive evolutionary reward of an orgasm. So what you need to do instead is actually think it through. That's so important. You say this a lot, think it through. That's
Yeah.
essential, isn't it? Like, think through the choice, because it is a choice. And when you learn about deprivation thinking, you can start off by setting this foundation of, yeah, this is a choice. I get to read a script right now. I'm going to make my choice. I'm going to rewire my brain. And then you just move on with your day. You don't even think about this throughout your day. Just crack on with what you want to do, whatever you want to do with your life. So, yeah.
Yeah, because like the thing is I think when I looked deeper into her stuff, it was like the idea was to sit with the desire, sit with the feelings, and feel it in your body and stuff like that. And yeah, that's a good start. But you know, most people aren't even going to get there unless they learn, about deprivation thinking. You don't even get to that place where you're willing to just sit there, because you're going to get the hell out of these feelings of deprivation that you're causing with incorrect thinking. And it'll come at you a few different ways, which we teach about, But yeah,
Mm.
it's I would say, like, how are you going to do that? How are you going to get to that place where you can just sit with it? And then sitting with it is like, you can do that for a while, meditate or whatever, just try to be with it. but then that junky thinking comes in, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, wait, we're done with this now. Let's go. And then you got to understand that and have a very, very specific tool for dealing with the junky thinking, or
Mm.
it's gonna overpower the sitting, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And also not like obviously if you're going through this problem, it's difficult. It's really, really difficult. Done it 10 years, and I'm sure in one of these episodes we'll read out my remember letter, which is so
Yeah.
brutal. It's dark, like it is dark. But the thing is, you don't want to be having like too much compassion around relapsing. You don't want to be like, okay, it's just one relapse, one setback. The moment you have those sort of thoughts, you're really, really back in addiction. That's a junkie thought. That's like junkie thinking 101. You called it 101 in the program
Yeah.
as well. And that's what it is. Like once is okay. If once is okay, when's once not going to be okay? You're just going to be in a cycle indefinitely. This is never going to end. So you got to realize that actually once is not okay. And that's a real, real big wake up call for me, I would say this year is
Yeah.
really deepening that, understanding that properly through my mind and
Yeah.
not through my actions.
Yeah, phase two of the program, the big focus on addiction and thinking you can get away with it. And the thing is, you get to a place where once you're clear enough on all this, it's like you don't even want to try to get away with it. You're not hoping that you can get away with it because you
Yeah.
know the reality of it. You know the reality of addiction. And yeah, it's possible. It can be done. Yeah, it'll
Yeah.
be nice to hear your remember letter again too. Maybe we can do
Yeah.
that on the next podcast.
Yeah, sure, sure. And yeah, we're
Yeah,
hoping to do a lot more of these podcasts now. So I've
yeah,
taken a slight financial hit and gone down to 3 days at work because I want to spend 2 days a week editing these podcasts, producing
yeah,
them. And I really do hope we can just provide a lot of value and change people's
yeah.
thought lines so they can gain freedom from this problem. If you do want more help as well, we do have a free training video that you can download at www.thomasmolyneux.com. I'll
Oh,
leave the
yeah,
link
that's
in the
great.
description. Yeah,
Mhm.
so go check that out. And yeah, thanks a lot for listening to this episode. Thanks for coming on again, Mary. I'm sure we'll be doing a lot of these.
Of
Pleasure
course.
as
Yeah,
always.
always,
Um,
yes.
so yeah, all right. Take it easy, everyone. Thanks. And yeah, if you want to get in touch or anything as well, I'm available at tom@finallyquitporn.com. Yeah, just get in touch and we're always here to try and help people. Let's go. Bye bye.